Welcome to Surviving the Side Hustle podcast, the place where expert-based business owners learn how to build momentum, avoid burnout, and create sustainable success on their own terms. I'm your host, Rob Tracz, strength and conditioning specialist turned founder and CEO of Prime Performance Coaching, the personal performance strategy firm for high-achieving business owners and operators. I partner with driven entrepreneurs to implement the Prime Performance process, an awareness-based operating system that's helped me and countless solopreneurs and small business owners evolve from just being high performers on the edge of burnout to prime performers building sustainable success. The impact of Prime Performance process has led me here, where I'll show you how to get unstuck and design your own Prime Performance life without sacrificing your health, relationships, or sanity. So whether you're hustling after hours or scaling your passion project, today and here, you're going to get real stories, science-backed strategies, and practical frameworks to help you excel every step of your journey. It's time. Let's get intentional, build momentum, and become prime performers together. We'll get started just after this message. If you're an ambitious business owner or side hustler who's ready for a breakthrough, tired of spinning your wheels, looking to slide past burnout and build real momentum, I'd love to invite you to book a free Prime Performance strategy session with me or one of our strategists. This is your chance to get personalized insight on what's been holding you back and get a clear path to move forward. No fluff, just actionable strategy. So if you're interested, visit survivingthesidehustle.com/free call to request your spot now. Again, that's survivingthesidehustle.com/free call. Looking forward to helping you become a prime performer. What's going on, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Surviving the Side Hustle. I'm super excited because today's guest is someone who's been in the coaching world long before it became cool and exploded with all this popularity nowadays. Today's guest is Brian Miller, and he is the president of Coach Approach Ministries, which is one of the leading coach training schools aligned with the International Coaching Federation. And he's also the founder of P3 Leaders, where he works with executives and leaders around the country. So Brian has been podcasting since, I think he said 2015, and he's recorded over 500 episodes himself. And he's spent plenty of time helping leaders shift from telling people what to do to helping them think. In today's episode, I'm excited because we're going to dive into things like the real difference between coaching and consulting, why coaching has exploded over the past few decades, how coaching changes leadership, parenting, and even boardroom conversations, and finally, why most of us think that we're the smartest person in the room until we learn to ask better questions. So Brian, welcome to the show, man.
Thanks. That sounds exciting. I may stick around for this myself.
All right. Sweet. Well, I'd love to just dive right in. And when you had shared with me that you'd been podcasting for so long, that really intrigued me. And then it was really cool to learn that you've been coaching for even longer. So I want to kind of kick things off and ask you what really originally pulled you into the coaching world?
Sure, it was by accident. So it was around 2010. I was leading an organization, and actually was going really, really well up to a certain point. And then my key leaders, it was a nonprofit situation. They all moved away, not together, but it was the perfect storm. And then I found myself just like, I am treading water. I was literally getting depressed. And really just questioning, what am I doing and where am I going? And I got an invite to come to a coach training. And my first thought was, this will be a waste of time. Most training is just dumb. It's not going to be helpful. And I went to this training and my mind was literally blown. I could not believe the mindset shift between telling people what to do and helping people discover what they wanted to do. People do not do what you tell them to do. People do what they tell themselves to do. And I've had some people I've trained, at least at the beginning, to think you can manipulate people really easy with coaching. And I suppose you could, but that's not the point. The point is to tell people, okay, here's where we're going. How are you going to get there? And they think about who they are, what's important to them, what their strengths or skills are. They think about so many of these things. And then it's just surprised me, unbelievable, Rob, when you give people in a safe environment the opportunity to make a good, informed decision, they do. They make, we just think, well, what if you just let people do whatever they want? They're not going to do well. I find if you give them a safe environment and help them think about who they really are, they always do the right thing. And that's probably always is extension, but that's how I got into it. And my whole mindset shifted through that training. I love the training. I thought I want to give this training. I became a trainer for this. I ended up joining Coach Approach Ministries at some point, which was a surprise to me. And then just recently I became the president. So that's a short story of how I got here. Accident.
Well, congratulations on stepping into the role. That's got to be pretty exciting.
Yeah. Love it.
But I want to kind of go back because you said your mind was blown when you first kind of got in there, and the class really taught you to kind of like ask better questions instead of kind of just leading them through it. So I'd love to kind of touch on that a little bit, because from my own background, from what I can remember, at least from all the different certifications and trainings and even university level education, I don't remember too much on the question asking. Like, yeah, there's some like pre stuff that you go through when you first start working with somebody. But then it was always just kind of like, hey, you should tell them to do this or that, or they need to correct this. So, like, to me, that was mind blowing when I finally had that realization. But that took
Sure.
me years of coaching, I guess, first, or telling people what to do. So, I want to hear a little bit about where it was like for you.
Well, I could think of a couple of situations. So even in my leadership position, coming before my organization and saying, I've been to the mountain. I know what the vision is. I'm here to share it with you. You are so lucky that I've come to impart my wisdom to you. And here it is. It's bold. What do they say? A big BHAG. It's a big, hairy, audacious goal. I mean, and then I doubled it. I read the books and everything about vision said, the biggest thing you can do, and then double it. I doubled it. And I remember sharing this with my organization. And then one of the key leaders came up to me afterwards and he shook my hand and he said, "Good luck." And he said it in a way that was just struck me kind of funny. It was like, he didn't mean, it wasn't saying I'm in. That's not what he said. He said, "Good luck." And I think he meant it, good luck, because you're on your own, because nobody else is, I don't know what you're thinking. Nobody else is going to do this. This isn't their idea. This isn't what they want to do. This doesn't excite anybody. It just excites you. And we like you, but I don't know if we like you enough to do all that. Another example would be, I felt like I would go into a board meeting. I'd be on a board and they'd be like, "Oh, here's the problem." And I'm like, I'm looking around the room, and this, you kind of referred to this, and I'm being facetious, and I'm not being facetious, which I'm just sharing my own arrogance. I'd look around the room and I'd realize I'm the smartest person in here. So they would really benefit by me, the smartest person, just identifying the problem and giving them a solution so they can happily move on. And I would, over and over again at these meetings, different kinds of meetings, different groups, I would share a brilliant idea. And then and then somebody else would share a dumb idea. And I'm thinking, why are they even listening to the dumb idea? I just gave them a great idea. And then they would have other ideas. And then it would just I'm like, what are we even doing here? I don't want to be on a, group that doesn't, I'm blaming them. They don't want to take action. They don't want to take a good idea. They're maybe being selfish about their own ideas, whatever. But after I became a coach, I absolutely changed my whole mindset. I would go in, I would hear the problem. And before I just jumped on a solution, because I would really just ask questions or make observations. Doesn't always have to be questions that evoked more awareness, one, about the problem, and two, about us. Why are we having that problem? What are our particular strengths that we could bring to bear here? What needs to change about us for this problem to go away? And begin to ask questions, and then really drawing out people. And so, in any group like that, there are people who are going to talk and there are people who are not going to talk. I want to hear from everybody. I mean, I am curious. And so then we hear from everybody. And then once you really open up a problem, and this is coaching in general, once you really open up the learning about a problem, options appear that you did not see before. They were kind of hidden. You didn't realize that there's something I could do to change this whole situation. So then you're like, then everybody's got kind of a much more obvious, oh, I see what we need to do. And we're all like, oh, how do we get on board together? And we make that plan together. Who's going to do this? And how can you help? And we all get on board in the same place. The biggest aha was, Rob, and it's all, in some ways it's disappointing. It works. And what doesn't work, and particularly more and more today, it may have worked. Honestly, it might have worked 100 years ago to tell people what to do, but it doesn't work today. People do not do what you tell them.
Yeah. And I mean, I've got my reasons why I kind of think that is kind of changing. I think we're kind of evolving a little bit as like a society as a whole, right? So I would imagine 100 years ago, information was way more valuable on how to do something. So you needed somebody to necessarily come in and be like, hey, this is what you need to do because I know that this is the right thing. And I think now that information is so readily available with AI and things like that, I think helping people or asking better questions, I think that stimulates some more of that thought. And then you're consulting with like everybody's putting their 2 cents in, and then you come out with this like greater sum. Got anything to comment on that kind of?
Well, you've got to be able to operate independently today. And this is when coaching came in the 70s because, and I'm going to jump even from the 70s, even more closer to today. But before 1970, people who worked in industry, most of them worked on a line. They were told to do the same thing. Our whole education system was designed about rote learning. I'll tell you, you repeat it back. And that's because when you went to work in a factory, I'll tell you, you repeat it back. I'll show you how to do it. You do it just like I did. They do not want you to think. This is whole Henry Ford. Everything's made exactly the same. I do not, I don't want any deviation. And in the 1970s, computers came about and people were able to do some things and be more innovative. And they literally had to start encouraging their employees to think because they had encouraged them not to think. Now let's jump ahead today. So it seems to me, and I know a lot of 20 to 30-year-olds, they're my kids' age. And I'm trying to think of one of them that doesn't work remotely. I can think of one or two, but most of them work remotely. They work in their own homes on their own time for a company. They know what they're supposed to do, but they've got to solve problems on their own. And so this is a whole different environment than before of where, somebody's watching you and you got to do what they said. And at this point, everybody's got to be able to think for themselves and function in a much different way as a team. We have to operate organizations differently. It's curious. I'm curious, have you seen that? And I don't want to pigeonhole you as the sports guy, but have you seen that in sports, perhaps it's funny because you can't play basketball remotely. We were talking about basketball. I like basketball. But there's a lot of individual sports. And so I wonder if there's even a surge in individual sports because I don't have to, I don't have to think as a team.
I do. So like when I was kind of exiting strength and conditioning, I had left the facility that I was in, and then I started working with a lot of people one-on-one, kind of going to different homes and stuff and training. And I think that's as close as it's going so far, but then maybe they are now doing a lot more kind of like remote training. I know like obviously sports training, sports performance, you're in there, you're working as a team, you're going over plays, you're building like the connection with the players, but then the players themselves are going training, doing their own things on their own. So there is a degree of that.
For sure. And team sports, there's a lot more individual training. I've heard this. That like in basketball, it used to be like in the NBA after practice, they'd play one-on-one forever. They don't anymore. They go and do their own. They have a routine. They go do their routine. In the summer, they do not play summer league. They have their routines, they play. I'm curious too, as you went into people's homes, and I wonder if you had to make a change. It would be easy to say, okay, Larry, I see that you need to get in shape. Here's what we're going to do. And Larry might do it, he might not do it. But to ask the question, Larry, what do you want to do? What are your goals? How could we do this to make it fun for you, to make it you want to do it every day? Larry wouldn't have called you if he could do it on his own every day.
No. No, but that's the approach that I would take with people though. And I wouldn't necessarily, what I would do is I would kind of create a program for them based off of what I think that they would enjoy the most, based off of what they've given me, what I've seen in a movement assessment, and just kind of gathered information. But then it's being able to be adaptable and changing. So here's the program. This is what we're going to be executing on. And then having those check-ins and putting a lot of emphasis on the communication. So like, hey, how is our body taking to this certain stimulus of training? And hey, how are we actually enjoying this or not? Because like, yeah, you want to lose a little bit of weight, you want to train a little bit harder. All you got to do is just get out there and run some sprints as hard as you can. But
Right.
that might not be the best mode for everybody. So yeah, you got to kind of pick and choose.
This isn't, I mean, you could figure it out yourself, but what does a coach bring to the situation? This is what is different than consulting. So consulting is, I'm going to look at your problem and I'm going to tell you what you ought to do. And the reason why, this is number one reason why consultants are so expensive, is because if I don't charge you an arm and a leg, you won't do it. I guarantee you won't do it. So if I were to consult with you for free, I'm just making this up, but for about whatever. And I told you, this is me in a meeting. I'm going to give you the best. I'm looking around, Rob. I'm the smartest guy in the room, not in this room. You're probably smart too. But I'll tell you what you ought to do, and you're not going to do it. But if I charge you $10,000 for this advice, you'd be like, I paid $10,000 for this advice. I probably ought to do it. That's the only reason they charge $10,000, not because it's better advice or worse advice. It's so that you will take the action to do it. So the problem is it, if I give you an idea, it's not we say it at our company a lot that it's like washing a rental car. No one washes a rental car. And do you know why they don't wash a rental car? Because it's not their car. So I can give you a great idea and you can be like, it is kind of a great idea, but it's not my idea. But if I can coach you and I can draw out of you what you want to do and how you want to do it, and it may have some flaws, and I'll even tell you, Rob, I promise. If you're saying something stupid, I'll say, I'll challenge you. I may not say it's stupid, but I'll challenge you. I'll say, is that the best way to do it? Or is there other ways to do it? I'm not going to let you just drive off a cliff. But if you walk out of that conversation saying, I have an idea and I want this to happen, you're going to put so much effort into making that happen, so much more effort to making that happen because it's your car. And you're like, I'm taking pride in this. I want this baby to run. I can't wait to see what I can do. It's exciting. It's interesting. It gives you agency. And I think, number one, people think people have problems with, even like young adults today is like, they don't take responsibility. Coaching's it can sound like, oh, what do you want to do, honey? But actually it's like, they take responsibility. They're like, here's what I would like to do. And I will take responsibility. It actually does the opposite of what people think.
Well, what do you say about those who almost are kind of like they don't want the responsibility? So then they do kind of just want to hear you like, oh, no, just tell me what it is exactly I have to do. How do you handle a situation like that?
For sure. I won't tell them. I will. It's hard not to rescue people, but you're not doing them any favor. I mean, I would start to think, I'd be like, what is it about this that makes you not want to take action? What's making you hesitant? What is it? What is that thing? And let's at least identify it, give them a safe place to figure out what it is and why it is. Well, I don't want to be a disappointment, or I just don't have confidence in myself, or, okay, well, the problem is not that you want to do what you just said. That's not the problem. So that's interesting. The problem is you don't have confidence to take action. That's the problem. So let's address that as the problem. Let's identify, how much confidence do you have? Some. All right. Well, now we know where you're at. What would it take to get you one more level of confidence? Let's think about that. Usually it takes me taking a risk and seeing success. So, okay, well, how can we get a quick win for you? How can we build some success for you so that you can take that next step? So that's just the interesting way of doing it but you definitely have to have a really strong mindset of, I'm not going to rescue you. That's the last thing I'm going to do. I've seen some coaches. I train a lot of coaches, and one problem I've seen with coaches is, we're Coach Approach Ministries, so we're Christian, and sometimes the problem with Christian coaches is they're too nice. And Rob, you say, oh, here's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to grow my business, but it's hard, and I got to be out, and I've got a family now, whatever. And I just and a lot of Christian coaches I know will go, oh gosh, Rob, yeah, oh boy, that is a lot, man. I don't know. I hear you. I get it. Been there. And what I do as a coach is say, okay, so what needs to change for you to be able to go do these things? What needs to change? What do you need to stop doing? What are your priorities here? Just and what's essential? What do we not want to drop? Okay, we'll protect that. Gotcha. I hear you. But I'm not going to coddle you if you want to. And that's the thing about coaching as opposed to, say, counseling. Here's how you know whether you need counseling or coaching. Counseling, you can't move. You can't move. You're just stuck. I just can't get over it. I can't move on. I can't forgive. I can't whatever. I can't leave the house. I can't. Coaching, you can move. You just aren't sure where to go. And coaching helps you get that direction and your next steps, and very, very different. It's a healthy service. And that's a big thing. This is huge. One reason coaching doesn't catch on is because if you hire me as your coach in your organization, or your organization hires me as your coach, there is a stigma that the people are like, oh boy, he's probably about to get fired. They got him a coach. And really what we ought to be doing is saying, Rob's the next president of this organization. We should get him a coach because he's our best guy. we should help him really figure out where he wants to go and empower him.
Well, that's where coaching originated from, right? I think it was it really started off as helping these C-suite people and helping them kind of move through. And then I guess over the years, it kind of trickled, now available to so many other people in different courses of the world.
It was probably surprising. I think they probably did it for different lower level groups of people. And then they looked at it and were like, I'd like to get some of that.
Yeah.
And so the really great coaching right now is C-suite. And you can tell if somebody's going to succeed by whether they want coaching or not. Because the people who don't want coaching, I don't need coaching. I know exactly what to do. I don't need anybody's help. These people are going to fail. And especially in today's environment, because they don't know everything and everything's changing all the time. And you really got to be, you need a team to understand what's going on today. And so if you want coaching, that's a good sign.
Yeah, definitely. And I wanted to touch on because people hire coaches because they directly go out and seek coaches because they are facing some sort of a problem or something that they want to overcome. But what I really liked when we first connected and we were speaking, you had said that you really believe in coaching the person and not the problem. Can you kind of unpack that a little bit?
Sure. So there's a transition that coaches need to make. And the first thing is, that they coach the problem. So the client says, here's my problem. I don't have enough time. Here's what I'm wanting to start exercising, and I don't have enough time to do that, or whatever it is. And the amateur coach says, oh, wow. Okay. Do you have a calendar? Have you thought about where you might put exercise at? Have you thought about getting up earlier? Yeah. No, you haven't. You're not an early bird. Okay. But you have tried it. It didn't work. Okay. I don't know. And so we start by trying to coach the problem. And then we can kind of back up a little bit and say, you know what? I'm not the process for solving this problem needs to not be in my head. It needs to be in their head. And so if I'm coaching you, I'm not going to ask you all the specifics. Like, Rob, tell me, your weight, tell me your stature. I'm not even going to ask you any of those questions. I'm going to help you think about the problem. I'm going to open up your brain to the problem in ways you have not thought about the problem. For example, an easy example would be, okay, Rob, you say you want to start working out today. Let me ask you this. What do you want your physicality to be in a year? And I guarantee they haven't thought about that. It adds a dimension to it. What makes it important that you exercise? I want to be healthy in my 70s. Okay. I mean, that's helpful. That's helpful information. The ultimate coaching comes down to that, and this gets a little bit, I don't think it's complex, but the problem becomes a mirror to see myself. And so when I see myself in the mirror of my problem, I realize honestly what needs to grow in me and mature in me. Because I think maturity is kind of come a weird word, You're acting so immature, like, oh, that's offensive. But we are immature in lots of senses. We're not leaning into our strengths. We're not being aware of other people. There's just so many things. If I've got the right client, one of the first questions I ask is, what needs to change about you for this to work? So, I mean, in anything, I want to save money. I want to be a financial coach. I want to be a physical coach. I want to be a whatever. I want to be a job coach. I want to move ahead in my job. What needs to change about you for you to get to the next level? And I guarantee that's some work that they haven't done. It can sound a little like counseling, but it's not counseling, because in counseling, usually something's broke, and I may find something broke and have to refer them to a counselor. But many times it's like, I need to speak up more in meetings. Okay. Well, let's don't just leave it at that. Let's make a goal that the next time you're in a meeting, you're going to speak up one more time than you usually would. Let's make that a goal. Okay. Take that step. So, and what happens is I become a person who feels valued, like I have enough, people even say, I thought it was a good idea. I didn't feel comfortable saying it. Why not? Who are you not to say something in a meeting? So that's where coaching the person comes. I start to realize I can grow as a person. I can be a bigger person. I think that's something we need even today is, when we have conflicts with people, we need to be a bigger person. How do I become a bigger person? Whether my boss is the problem or my employee is the problem. How do I become the bigger person? Because that's what's going to move everything forward.
Hey, sorry for the interruption. It's me, Rob, and I hope you're enjoying today's conversation. But I wanted to remind you, if you're a driven entrepreneur or an expert-based business owner who wants to get unstuck, create sustainable momentum, and really start moving forward, I've got a free resource just for you. You can download my 5 keys to clarity and momentum. It's a PDF guide. It's a quick read, and it'll help you cut through the noise, clarify your next steps, and start building the systems that you need for sustainable success. So if you're new here, or if you haven't grabbed it yet, this is the first step to applying these principles in your own journey. So head over to survivingthesidehustle.com/5 keys and download your free copy today. Again, that's survivingthesidehustle.com/5 keys. Yeah, and that is tough and challenging sometimes. And that's why people need to consider looking into getting a coach or something, because it removes some of that uncertainty that is around that evolution. Because when you're trying to step into a position that you've never been in as either a person or an actual position, you don't know what you don't know. So that's where I think, a coach can help remove some of that uncertainty.
Well, here's something I'm going to come in with an assumption, and this could be helpful. So you're like, I don't know if I'm capable of doing the next level up job. I don't know, whether I have the competency. I don't know whether I have the internal persistence or whatever it is. Here's what I believe in you. And not necessarily that you have X, Y, or Z, but I think when you look inside, we're going to find some good stuff, and we'll have to do some work, but we'll build on it. And I think a lot of people look inside, or they're afraid to look inside. Like if I look inside, I'm going to find I'm much weaker than I thought, or that I don't have this, or I don't have what it takes. And I think you do have what it takes to do whatever it is you're supposed to do. And so you can at least trust me in that sense. And we're going to look in this together. It's going to be okay. You're not going by yourself like it's some big dark hole that, you're afraid to look at. We'll look at it. We'll line it out. I've got lights. We'll turn them on. We'll see what we see. We'll be okay with it. we'll whatever's there, we'll work with it and we'll move ahead. What do you think some people are just a little worried about finding out what their limits are or that they're
Oh,
not capable of it, even athletically? They're like, I would never go out for that team because I
yeah,
might not make it.
I think a lot of people I think there's a lot of different reasons. I think some people are, though, afraid of the success that comes with it too, because that brings on the more responsibility because, geez, man, everything that I'm doing currently in my life is pretty tough. Life is hard. And it's like, if I do achieve this level of success or if I do something really well, like, I wonder, like, you might not actually be thinking it, but the part of you could subconsciously be thinking, like, oh, geez, if I get that promotion, that's going to be a lot harder. And then all of a sudden, you might be slowing down on some of your deadlines or whatnot. And I think that is a role that happens too.
And I don't want to fail. I have seen people rise to there's a principle. I rise to the level of my incompetence. I don't want to rise to the level of my incompetence. Well, you don't have to. You don't have to. And that is something that certainly changed about me is that if somebody came to me and said, what do you want to talk about? Here's the issue. I'm thinking about putting my name in for promotion. For sure, my initial thought was, well, we want to do that. So let's talk about what needs to happen for you. But that's not what they asked. They said, I'm wondering if I should. And now I'm a lot more respectful of the question. I don't know if you should. I don't know the situation. I don't know your skills. I don't know your organization. I can obviously see that you're interested in doing something else, that you're bored or you're itchy or something. I get that. Let's just even use this possibility as a reflection. What does this tell you about you? About what you want to do, about what you like to do, about what you're good at. What are some other options besides going for this promotion? So sometimes I find this to be a huge piece that people tend to think things are binary. Like I can go for the promotion or not go for the promotion. Oh, goodness, no. The options are endless. Maybe there's another promotion. Maybe there's another job. Maybe I could go and renegotiate my own position. Things are not binary. Or I find that, I'm having a problem. I can either say something or not say something. No, no, no. There's a bunch of options here. You could say something to somebody else. You could you could say something half as much as you think you would have to say, or three-quarters as much. I think that's something huge about coaching is it helps people really think about, a nuance of what they can do. It's not that simple.
Yeah, at least I tend to default to like yes and no, ones and two or ones and zeros. There's a whole gradient for
Yeah.
everything. Once that kind of clicked in my head, it was like, oh, okay, like let me see how I can kind of move a little bit differently and kind of looking through things through different lenses. And that is a huge change, or at least for myself, it was. So I can see other people definitely defaulting to that binary kind of perspective on life in different situations.
Everybody does. I didn't know they did, but they do. They think it's binary. They have not thought about the future. No one thinks about the future. What do you want this to look like in 30 days? Oh, 30 days. I don't know. They're just thinking about the moment. So there's just some things that coaches can help you change your perspective really quick that are helpful.
Yeah. And so I wanted to kind of touch base on because we had talked and sort of touched on it a little bit already. But when I was working strictly strength and conditioning, all the athletes that I worked with, it was way more of that, like, hey, here's the advice. This is what you need to do. Like, go do this and attack that. And it would almost come without question and they'd go out and execute on that. But when I shifted into the personal training and started shifting more into the performance coaching, I had to then start to go through this actual coaching approach and gathering more information and kind of seeking to kind of bring their motivation up. And as I'm thinking through how I wanted to ask you, I started to kind of come to an answer in my head of like, okay, so looking at it, taking a step back, I see that the motivation there was two different categories. So the athletes, they were highly motivated for change. And a lot of people in personal training, they were motivated just because of external motivation. So that's where the question asking and pulling through and bringing their autonomy and choice and everything that they have to say into it, helping them buy in better, helps them kind of create the change for themselves and planting it in their brain.
That is a brilliant distinction. I'm picturing this, right? So somebody who's wanting to be more physically fit, that the strength training, they like looking in a mirror because they like the muscles getting a little bigger.
Yeah.
They just like to see the result, the physical result on their body, and they enjoy that. And they do, they like that. They come every day and maybe they're comparing to other guys like, oh, I've gotten bigger than you, whatever it would be. But you're absolutely right. Me right now, I need to be in better physical condition, not because I want to look in a mirror or compare myself. It's because I want to have more energy when I'm doing X, Y, or Z. So the gap probably between the action and the result, and this is all just coming out of my head here a little bit, Rob. So I'm flying by the seat of my pants just for a second, but it was all coaching for sure. The gap when you're coaching and you're looking at so very simply, coaching is from where you are to where you want to go. Okay. So what I need to do is look at the gap and maybe I can even set up some, here's where I am, here's where I want to be in a year, here's where I want to be in 3 years. And I can at least lay down some landmarks. And then I really need to coach the gaps. Here's where I am and here's where I want to go. What needs to happen? So you want to add some muscle. Well, you take some creatine and work out. And then you're like, oh, I see some muscle. But I want to have more energy. The gap is greater and the connection is harder. So just that even awareness and bringing that awareness to your client of we've got to set up maybe some more accountability or some more markers so that maybe you can see that your energy level has risen, not from, where you're thinking you want it to be, but where would be a smaller step so we could see that success and get that win. Another thing I think that just it seems to blow people's mind, it blew mine. When you think about accountability, I thought there was only one accountability, and that's my accountability to like you, Rob. Like you're gonna hold me accountable. You're gonna make sure I do the work or whatever. I find that accountability is the weakest human to human accountability is the weakest accountability. You don't want to hold me accountable. You're not excited about saying, Brian, I've noticed you're not doing the work you're supposed. You're not. And if you were excited about that, you're the last person on earth I'd want to be accountable to because you get excited about telling me that I'm failing. The best accountability is personal accountability. So if this achieves, I get a reward. But you can't just assume that every client wants a reward. They may not, they may work for that, they may not work for that. Some clients want a penalty. So if I don't do it, then I get penalized by this. Some clients, and I find this to be one that I find even most useful, is want some kind of visualization. And if it's exercise, I can visualize, one you could like, oh, I'm looking at the scale or whatever, but I can create some kind of visualization that helps me to see it and to know that the right piece. I'll give you an example. I had a client, he needed to set up several appointments. He was having that 500-pound phone problem is what salespeople call it. He just felt like he was, putting himself, he was being a burden to people by calling them. Like, I need something from you. I need you to let me come and speak at your organization. And he just felt sick about it. We talked about what it is he needed to talk to them about. And this metaphor came up about, they're thirsty and he has water. I'm like, oh, boy, when you catch a metaphor, hide the metaphor as far as you can. So at the end of this conversation, I'm like, go get a bottle of water, put it by your phone, and don't move that bottle of water until you have your call set up. And, I later asked him, how'd that go? He said, I had it done that afternoon. I had it all done. It was just this mental, like, I can't stand a call. I feel bad about it. Like I'm a burden, like I'm asking for something, I just hate it. And there's just this water bottle. And it wasn't like I know I was going to ask you later. So you better have done it because I'm going to ask you later. No, that doesn't work. This bottle of water transformed his whole mind. He's like, oh, I've got water. I need to call some people who I know need water and move it forward.
Yeah, that works. That works so well, right? The metaphor is such a powerful tool.
That's huge.
Yeah. So I want to ask because you don't only coach people, but you train coaches in general. And I think you said you coach hundreds, maybe you said even thousands of coaches.
Millions, if we're
Wow.
exaggerating.
So I want to know, in your opinion, other than just like asking better questions, what really sticks out to you as a differentiator between some of the better coaches and some of the
Sure.
most improvable coaches?
Sure. I've heard, I'll hear people say, I love coaching. It's all about asking questions. I'm like, it's not. It's not, because it starts to sound like Law and Order. Where were you on the night of the murder? It just starts to feel like an interrogation. Let me ask you this. I hear a lot of that from coaches. Let me ask you this. I'm like, oh, surprise, surprise. You're going to ask another question. Glad you told me you're going to ask me another question, because I would have never guessed that you're just going to ask me another question. It can be very powerful, asking questions that are open-ended, that are not leading, a really terrible question is, have you ever thought about trying this? I hear that a lot. Like, that's not even a question. That's a suggestion. It's a suggestion. But the best coaches move from the idea of asking questions to evoking awareness. And so my whole goal is to open up your brain a bit so you can see this thing with a wider perspective. That's my whole goal. And I can do that sometimes by asking a question, but I can also do it by making an observation. I'm listening to you, and you're telling me that your organization, that the people you're leading don't always like the decisions you make. And as I listened to this whole thing, my observation was, they don't know how decisions are made in the organization. They think it's a vote, or they just they just don't know. And when I say that, I can see my client go, his brain opens up. And he's like, I now see this picture in a bigger way. So my goal is to not, the way I talk about it sometimes is, when I'm coaching somebody, often all of a sudden the fruit will appear. I can see the apples on the tree. And a bad coach goes over and picks the apple and shows it to them and says, look at that. Look at that. I want to show you what I saw. A better coach says, I'm starting to see more apples. Do you see anything? Is anything starting to appear to you? And I can make some observations, because some of the apples aren't where you thought they were. Some of the apples are, and this is an observation. I mean, I'm using a metaphor, but some of the apples are on different limbs, and some of the limbs you can start to help them understand, what the limbs of the tree are, as opposed to start pointing out the apples. And then the great thing about that is, they'll be like, I see it. And they'll describe, maybe I'm using a metaphor, the limb and the fruit. And I'm thinking, I didn't even see that one. I didn't even see that one. That's something that, I just help them to know there's more limbs and there's more fruit, and they found something. And I guarantee I definitely have done this before. They found their own fruit, and then I'll be like, oh, let me show you a piece of fruit I found. And at the end of the conversation, I'm like, what'd you learn about today? They're going to describe their fruit. And I used to be sitting there going, I describe some fruit too. I'm the smartest guy in the room. Nobody seems to care about what I think. So maybe, Rob, I'm not the smartest guy in the room, or people like their own ideas better.
Yeah. Well, I got a feeling that you are pretty smart, but I also believe people really enjoy their ideas as well.
That's right. Whether I'm the smartest guy, I'm smart, but it doesn't matter. It's not as influential as you might think
Yeah.
to be the smartest person in the room. It's not as influential to help other people navigate, whether you're a coach or you're a leader. And sometimes you have to tell people as a leader. I'm not saying you don't, but the more you can get people to decide on their own what they're going to do within the framework or what you're trying to get accomplished, the more you're going to get traction, the better off your performance is going to be. Lots of stuff like that.
Yeah. So a lot of our listeners who are tuning in right now are leaders and
Mhm.
entrepreneurial, and in the world of needing to create influence and needing to communicate better and connect more. So if someone is listening to this, whether they're a coach themselves, or maybe they're interested in coaching or just like improving their performance, how can somebody kind of get connected with you or Coach Approach Ministries, and
Sure,
like,
sure.
how do they get in touch?
So I've got, for my personal coaching, I coach a lot of leaders. I mean, that's my goal. That's at p3leaders.com. P as in Paul, P3, the number 3, leaders.com. And if people are interested in coach training, particularly that's aligned with the International Coaching Federation, which is the certifying board, globally, that is, if you want to be a certified coach, you want ICF. We are a training organization that can help you get there. That's at Coach Approach Ministries.
Awesome. Yeah. And whether you want to be a coach or not, just going through the training and learning how to communicate and everything else is hugely beneficial for anybody in a managerial position or in a position of influence, I would say.
I would say so too. It changed my whole mindset, even if I hadn't gone into coaching, if I was just still leading, and I still do some leading, and I absolutely, I'm like, here's where we're going to go, but I really try to draw people out as opposed to tell people what to do.
Nice. I love that. Well, I want to be courteous of your time, and I love talking with you because it's so well related to what I'm doing, and I just love connecting with other coaches who are really passionate about creating better change and connecting with people and making that incredible impact in the world. So I just really appreciate you, Brian, taking the time to kind of carve it out of your life, your calendar, just to kind of share your experience and a lot of the value that you bring to not only the podcast, but the world. So I appreciate you on that. And
Well,
thank you.
thank you, Rob, and thank you for having this podcast to bring, different voices to your audience so they can also grow as you grow and you learn. I can see your hunger you are a guy that's just hungry to know more and how to be more effective. I can see that. And that's just going to serve you and your audience well.
No, I appreciate that. Thank you. But before I let you go, I want to ask you one final kind of like wrap up question here.
Okay.
So when you decide to hang up the coaching hat and kind of sitting back and reflecting, what do you hope that people would say about the way you showed up as a leader?
Yeah, that I was someone who listened to them, that I didn't just make assumptions, that I listened to the whole piece, that I had their best interest in mind. Here's one that I hope's very true, and it maybe sound counterintuitive. I hope they say, Brian always told me the truth, whether it was good or bad. I didn't have to wonder where I stood with Brian or how he felt about what I was doing. It was just always clear.
Love that. Love that. And Brian, again, thank you so much for coming on. I appreciate it so much.
Thank you, Rob. Appreciate it.
That's all for today's episode of Surviving the Side Hustle. If you found value here, please don't forget to rate and review the show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you're listening from. And please create a shared success by helping us share this episode with someone who you think would benefit from today's conversation. And finally, don't forget to connect with us at survivingthesidehustle.com and give us a follow on socials so that we can take part in following along in your entrepreneurial journey. Until next time, remember, success doesn't require a complete sacrifice, just strategy, momentum, and the right support.